All right, during the break, many questions came up. Don't want to spend a lot of time. One question that came up is 1,000 years is one day with the Lord. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but if what the Hebrew says is yom. Most of the time, the word yom is used. It's used in a context of a 24-hour day. Most of the time in the Hebrew. There are times in the Hebrew when it's used to depict a period of time, but it's clearly evident from the context that it means a period of time. When it speaks about Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, there's no context there that gives us a period. It's the literal translation is a 24-hour day. That's a short story. And I'll leave it at that for now. The other question was about the flood, and this next verse here we talk about, and God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas, and he saw that it was good. When God created land, it came up out of the water, and it was a single landmass. That single landmass in our current narrative, scientific narrative, has been called Pangaea. So if you look at all the continents, it's very obvious today that they at one time were part of one continent, right? They were all one landmass at one time. Question is, how did they get where they are now compared to where they were, what it was then? So again, a quick analysis by creation scientists, and I happen to agree that this is probably a good probability. Next week, I'm going to try to remember to bring a DVD I have that Ken Ham from the Science Museum put together that we can, I'll recommend it to you. You can look at it. Maybe we can borrow it and pass it around or whatever, but it does explain this. So in talking about the flood, what they think happened about the flood is that this Pangaea was still there up until the time of Noah. What they think triggered the flood under God's sovereignty, of course, was an asteroid. And the way they can calculate how they've calculated the volumes of waters in the ocean was that originally when you had this landmass, singular landmass like this, the seas were very shallow. The crust of the earth was shallow compared to the depth of the ocean. And underneath the crust was reservoirs of water. This is what they're surmising. So you would have, if I can get this erased without too much trouble.
Hey, Bob?
Yes.
When you do that, can we turn the light on so we can see what's going on?
Sure.
She can be
I
on
can
now.
get it, yeah. Every night.
Thank you.
So, that's not it there. Where did I put the eraser? Oh, there it is. Somebody hit it on me. Okay. All right. Oh. That was a dry. I hope that was a dry erase.
Well, those were Sharpies. Those were for the paper.
All right. Deal with that problem later. Okay, so the way the Earth was configured was you had, there's a surface of the Earth or the oceans. You had water up here, and so the waters were up here. That was the bottom of the ocean, the crust, and below that was waters. Okay, so what they're surmising happened is that there was an asteroid that came down here and went through the water and hit this crust and poked a hole in it. And because of the weight of this crust on top of that water, it pushed down and it just caused the water to come out in geysers. So when it talks about the fountain of the deep, they're surmising that it pushed down like that, and then it started to crack, and then there was numerous geysers that just kind of flew up into the sky, probably miles. I don't know how far, but miles up into the sky, and then the waters came back down just as this torrential rain. But as it did that, this land sunk. The crust here sunk as the water shot up out of it, and as this ocean bottom sunk like that, it pulled on Pangaea. It pulled on the landmass, and it pulled on the landmass, so it ripped it apart because the ocean bottoms were sinking. And that's what caused the tectonic movement. It just pulled everything apart. And so these land masses were moving right after the flood. They were moving fairly quickly, but over time they've been slowing down. They're still moving, by the way, slowly, but they're still moving. So they pull apart really quickly, and then they slowed down, and we are where we are today. But there is movement. They've measured the movement. It's still moving in millimeters per year.
So is there anywhere in there that says that the Earth was round?
That's what?
Do you really want to go there?
We don't want. I don't think we'll go there today. That's for another day. Okay. Yes.
Not to go into, because I know it's a science question, but is that just an assumption, or do they have some scientific proof that they feel like that really could have happened? Like, has there been discoveries or anything, or?
You read the story about when the sun stood still?
Time for another time. Yes, they have evidence for it.
I just was wondering.
They have.
For the asteroid?
Or the flat Earth?
Not the flat Earth. There is no evidence for a flat Earth.
Okay. I thought what?
Wait, I'm confused. What is there scientists for? The asteroid?
For the asteroid. One good example of that is there's down in Yucatan. If you ever look at the Yucatan, there's a huge crater that's in the ocean, right around. What's the name of that Mexican resort town?
Acapulco?
Cancun. I think it's just northeast of Cancun, I think. But if you look at a map and look at asteroid strikes, you'll see a satellite picture. It's a huge crater.
How did that? So it didn't destroy the Earth because it hit the layer? The asteroid.
Well, it did destroy the Earth because it caused the flood. Once that water shot up and it just inundated the land. Back in that time, there were no real mountains. It was mostly just hilly, but it wasn't mountainous. Mountains that we see today are made from tectonics, movement of lots of rock, like this. And that was the result of the flood. Okay, so verse 10 we're on. Let's go back down to verse 11. We're quickly running out of time. Okay, so I'm just going to breeze through some of these and just highlight the important ones. So this is verse 11, and it says, "And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself, and it was so." And so in this verse we have yields seed, and the Hebrew for that is Mazria Zera. And that's what this is. That word there. Now, if you look at that word, I know you probably don't know the Hebrew lettering, but if you look at it, you'll see in both of those words, there's 3 letters that are the same. Okay. Just as an introductory Hebrew lesson, most Hebrew words have a 3-letter root, and it's called a shoresh. those three letters, zera, or this three letters right here, that's the shoresh. That's the base meaning. One of them is a verb form, and one of them is a noun form. So the masria, the first word here, is the verb, and we translate that yielding in this translation anyway. What it means is seeding. So the idea of seeds is that they seed. There's a verb and a noun to that concept. Those things that were designed to be seeds carry through on their design by seeding. They go into action and seed. So it's seeding. And the same is true with the next manifestation there, whose seed is in itself, and that uses the same thing. It's interesting that in the Hebrew it doesn't say exactly seed in itself. In the Hebrew it uses the word bo, which means a seed comes to it. It arrives. The seed arrives within the plant, so it becomes a seed. It becomes a plant that has a seed that is within itself. It's an interesting play on Hebrew words. Does that make sense? So bo. Okay. This is the word bo. Remember what bo means? We say it in some music.
Go?
Bo.
No, doesn't mean go.
Means come. Means come. Arrive. Means come. So we some of the music we have is bo Yeshua, come Yeshua. So it's that one song that we changed to make it more literal. We changed it to match bo. So bo means to come. So the plant is the tree is just sitting there, and then the seed forms within it.
I thought the seed brought forth the plant.
It does, but it's a reproductive cycle.
Yeah, I see that.
Right?
Okay.
So it's interesting how the Hebrew writes it, because remember, Hebrew is a very literal language, and it's based upon observation and experience. So as they watch these things happening, they can see the seed just goes and grows. it arrives. And so it's just interesting. Okay, so that was day 3. And this next one says, let there be lights. Okay, this is one we need to spend a little bit of time on. Then God said, let there be, and that's a command, lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs and seasons, for Moedim. Remember that? Remember we went through this during Sukkot? For Moedim, and for days and years. So the let them be is a form of the word to be, but the way it's conjugated here, it's called a sequential imperfect, which means that it follows something and continues. So this is talking about lights in the firmament for signs and seasons, for days and years. And so we're going to read a little bit more on this as we go. And let's go into the next verse. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And so it was. Again, the sequential imperfect. In other words, imperfect is that it's never ending. It hasn't reached a stopping point. Lights are there, and they're continuing to move on. And it's sequential. In Hebrew, there is a specific verb form that gives us a nuance of sequence. So it's following a pattern, one thing after another. God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Okay? Notice, usually we assume that means sun and moon. But it doesn't say that.
No.
It's implied, but it doesn't say that. That's something we need to make a note of. And so he says he set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on earth, to rule over the day and over the night, to divide the light from the darkness, and God saw that it was good. So evening and morning were the fourth day. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of fast forward here on why he didn't say sun and moon. He was saying because it's not about the creation of the sun and moon. It's about the light. So the focus has to be on the light. He created the light in the first place. The sun is a metaphor for that light. The light of the sun reflects on the sun, on the moon. The light of the sun reflects on the moon. So if the sun is a metaphor for God or a reminder of God, if it gives us light in the daytime, we don't worship the sun, of course, but remember, we're talking about light, not about the object called the sun. We're talking about light. So if the light of the sun gives us light and heat, which is a metaphor for God, and hold that thought, because if we fast forward to Revelation 21 and 22, the new heavens and new earth, is there a sun?
No,
Why not?
because he is the light.
He is the.
Because he is the light.
The only.
All right, so let's rewind again. Go back to Genesis. The sun is a metaphor for God. It's shining on the moon, and the moon gives us the times and the seasons. But it's not the moon itself, it's the light that we see in the moon. The light that we see in the moon is what gives us the timing of the Moedim. Crescent, first crescent. As the moon gets through its phases, the new moon, the new month, Rosh Chodesh, the new month, it starts at the first crescent of the moon. It's not the moon that we're looking at, it's the light. And if God is metaphor in the sun, then what's the moon a metaphor of?
Us. Jesus. Or the sun.
Could be us, but Yeshua.
Yes. It's the sun. It's Jesus.
So you have the Father shining his light on the sun at the first of the month. You see a sliver of it, and as you get through half of the month to the 15th or so of a given month, you have a full moon.
We should have one.
The sun has come in fullness.
Even the story of Jesus is never about the man of Jesus. It's about the Father.
I and the Father are one. He said that if you knew who the Father was, you'd know who I am, right? So the Son is a reflection of the Father. But for us, it's about timing and process, and so it's the Moedim, the times in the season, are measured with that slice of light.
The Moedim are measured because of the coming of Jesus, and the phase of Jesus' life is
Yes.
shown in the Moedim.
Yes. And if we go back to Genesis, where we just talked about signs, and in this verse, seasons, talking about the seasons, what are the Moedim that show us the seasons? Or let me restate that. How are the seasons defined in this first parts of Genesis, where it talks about the light? Moedim. So what are the seasons of the Bible when it talks about seasons? Passover, unleavened bread, Sukkot, etc. The seasons of the Bible are not winter, spring, summer, fall. The seasons of the Bible are the Moedim.
So this is Pesach. Is that sun and moon?
It's the light. It is yes. Literally, physically, it's sun and moon. It is. But it doesn't say that because that's not what it wants to tell us. The experience, when these guys were out in the field at nighttime, they're not astronomers. What they saw was a sliver of light, or they saw the full moon, or in between, waxing and waning. So it's about light. It's not about the sun and moon.
But the way it's written, if we're going to be true to just the literal, when it says God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, even though they're not saying sun and moon, that's what they're referring to literally.
Yeah. Yes.
But we're taking it into metaphor, into
We
the
To-
light that it means, because we're not doing that.
no. Today we are. Yeah. So that was a fast forward. But when they looked at it, they were not looking at the moon. They were looking at the light.
They were looking at the stars.
They were looking at.
They saw the stars. They looked at the stars.
They saw the stars, and we know in Psalms that the star. I think Stacy read about how the stars show the glory of God. But it was the moon. It was the moon that was the part of the clock that timed the Moedim, that timed the months. So what timed the months was not the moon, it was the light of the moon. It was the light of the moon that timed the Moedim.
Okay, so question.
Yes.
Okay, I really don't know what I'm about to ask, so just kind of go with me for a second. So, in Western world, we base all of our stuff off of solar, off of the sun, right? Cycle. But everything Hebrew is based off of lunar, which is moon, right? Okay. So, I guess I'm just processing. There's got to be some significance to that, first of all. And then second of all, I think the Jewish people don't even realize that Jesus is the Messiah. However, their whole thing is based off of Jesus being the light and Jesus reflecting the Father. So it's all really back to Jesus being exalted and being the only way to the Father, which the Jewish people don't even realize that that's the case. But that's what their whole thing is based off of. Or like time and calendar and stuff.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. And thank God that he preserved the Jewish people.
Amen.
Amen.
Because we wouldn't have that. We wouldn't know that. We wouldn't know what they have saved for us. Because they don't know, they don't see that. They don't see that connection. Just as they don't see the connection with marriage. They don't see the connection with marriage and how that reflects the last, the marriage supper of the Lamb. They don't make those connections. But when they do their marriage, when they do a marriage within the Jewish culture, they reenact this whole process. I don't know if you've ever seen a Jewish marriage, but what they do in their marriage, where they have what's called the Erosine and the Nisuin, that's two parts of the marriage. That's all reenacting everything that stands biblically for this relationship that's going to be restored with the Creator, with the Father. When Jesus says, "I go away to prepare a place for you," that was the second step of the marriage ceremony. So there's a lot of things that they don't know what they're really doing, but they do it because of their culture and their.
And the moon would be literally nothing without the sun.
Correct.
So Jesus is 100% relying on the Father.
Yes.
But yeah, the reflection. But
Yes.
he wouldn't be Jesus without God's, and the way that the moon wouldn't be anything without the sun.
And I agree 100%. And to add this, we see him and his importance and his kingdom gradually reaching fullness. And when is Sukkot? What day of the month is Sukkot? 15th. And Sukkot's on the 15th, and full moon is 15th plus or minus a day, depending on which month.
Okay, so what's the significance of that?
The fullness of the moon, the Moedim are timed to coincide with fullness of the moon.
Right. So Sukkot is the Isn't that when he's supposed to come?
Yeah, there's a lot more to talk about in Sukkot,
Okay.
but yes,
All right.
the short answer, yes, it's the
He's also
fulfillment.
crucified on a pole.
Holy.
I noticed that one year.
Yep, it's all tied together. Okay, so let's move on real quick. Almost out of time. All right, so in this verse, 120, it says, "And God said, let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures." Okay, the word for living creatures here in the Hebrew is nephesh chaya, living creatures. But the word nephesh, remember we talked about nephesh last week? That's one of the words in Genesis 2:7 that describes the creation of man. God breathed into man the breath of life, and he became a living nephesh. Right. So the idea of nephesh is not just for man. It's about a living, breathing, mostly warm-blooded creature, and it's used in many cases for other creatures. So let's go across here some more real quick. So again, remember what we're doing here is we're looking at this text in the Hebrew just to kind of get an idea of how the Hebrews thought and how they put together their truth. And so this gives us a foundation of structure on how to move forward and how the truth of the Bible is built on this foundation. Let's say this square foundation, how the truth is built on this square foundation. And we can't superimpose traditions, Jewish or Christian, on the foundation just because they're traditions. So when we talk about nephesh as part of that creation of man statement, we have to understand that the Hebrew people did not understand nephesh to mean man or a man's soul. What it means is a living, breathing human being or creature. Because a living, breathing creature is not just man. There's many of them. Okay. And God said in verse 22, and let's go in verse 21. So God created great sea creatures, and that one is that word is tananim, sea creatures, but literally it means monsters. So this is where the creation scientists think, well, here is where the dinosaurs were made, the ocean-going dinosaurs, the big guys. And every living thing that moves with the waters abounded according to their kind, every winged bird according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. Verse 22 says, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply. Now, fruitful and what's translated as multiply there is paru rabu. This combination of letters right here. And paru means pare. Remember we say the blessing Baruch atah Adonai, ore peri. That's the fruit. So the word peru is fruit, but urabu does not mean multiply. It means abundantly. It comes from the word rabbah. Remember when we say todah rabbah? Thank you very much. Todah rabbah. So this is about be fruitful abundantly, greatly, much. Be very fruitful. And then 123 is talking about the fifth day, Yom Chameshi, which is ordinal number. 124 says, and then God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind. And it was so. So this living creature is translated as Behema. That's the word in Hebrew, Behemoth. The way we would translate that in English is behemoth. So some translations make this cattle, but I think Behemoth is more than cattle. I think it's big guys. Maybe dinosaurs, maybe rhinoceros, who knows? But it's the word is behemoth. That's translated here.
So what is let the earth bring forth? The earth bring forth.
Good point. So just as man was made from clay, so are these guys.
That's what that means.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good point, though. Good catch. And then in the next verse, it says, and God made the beast, and this is Chayot, which means it's the plural of life, which means living things. And God made the living things of the earth according to their kind. And the word for their kind is limina. Mean means from. So it means what the word limina means is to sort out from the species, specific species from among the mass of created animals. So when it says limina, it says according to its kind. It just means sorted out according to its species. "126 is one of our more important ones. Then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." All right, so the language of this is saying, let us make, and this is really a strange combination of grammar, because the way this is conjugated, it's first person plural. Does that make sense?
No.
It doesn't make sense. But we have to have a different concept of what God is. When he's saying, I am us. It's first person plural. Does that make sense? Kinda?
How is it imperfect? Does that mean continue?
It's continuing, yes.
So that because he just keeps continuing.
Well, he says, let us make. Yes, he is continuing to make us in our reproduction and in us staying alive. Remember in chapter 5, he says, my spirit shall not always strive with man. That's part of this, is that his spirit is not going to always be there to keep us alive for this age. And he goes on to say, because of that, man's age span will be, 70 or whatever it says, 120 years, I think. So his time gets cut off, but this is interesting that this is a plural imperfect. Our image is another plural imperfect, first person plural. According to our likeness, first person plural imperfect. So it's kind of doesn't make sense, but we have to see that God is a unity, is a diversity in unity. And we've said that before, let us make man. And the grammar of this shows that he's talking about I am is us. That's kind of a contradiction in our culture. But I am is us. That would be the same. I think intellectually we could say that it means the same thing as saying that I am my mind and body. I am us. The us being my mind, the us being my body. I am us. So there's a plurality, there's a diversity in my being as well. And I think that follows suit with being made in the image of God. And then again here in the last here, what says over the cattle, the word is behemoth again. Just give me a couple of seconds to run through these last couple of verses. So God created man in his own image, in the image of God he created him. He created him singular, male and female, he created them plural. So man is regarded as a singular identity, but in his identity, he's a diversity. In his identity, he has male and female. And
not transgender.
not transgender. Or not no gender. All right. And we'll skip 28, go to verse 29. God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields that seed, which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. So in these, now let me finish these last two. And also to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food, and it was so. So if I go back and look at the words for that real quick, is there something there? Yeah, so again, it's just nefesh kaya, living creatures. So let's go out to the next verse. Then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the sixth day, which is Yom HaShishi. And that's an ordinal number as well. So what's really, I know this could be kind of boring to you, but what we have to see in here is that that God has used the language to show us that in creation and in history, there's some kind of process that he's designed into all of this. There's something that's sequential, there's something that's ongoing, there's something that is meant to last for eternity. So as we get into the realm of sin, as we will next time, we have to see that a lot of this stuff continues. The destiny of seeds didn't stop. The effort of mankind to be fruitful and multiply did not stop. But there's some additional issues that have come about because man now lives in sin. And so we'll start to talk about that next time. Just remember from this stuff that there's process. God created process. He started with seeds, and it's all very literal in that he created all of us to experience all of these processes ideally and in the beginning before sin in an environment that was eternal. And that's where we were created to be, in the garden. All right?
I know the Jewish day starts at sunset. So why did God choose to do it that way? We just have to accept it that the day starts at sunset? Is there a reason?
You'll just have to accept it for today.
Okay.
It's a long story, but we'll talk.
There's a reason.
There is a reason, yes.
Why he chose to do it that way.
There is a reason, yes.
And you're not going to give it today.
No, not today. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day. I thank you for brothers and sisters who came here to hear this story. And Lord, I pray that your truth, your story will make a difference in our life, and that we will take this and go forward and continue to learn your truth. Lord, I pray that your truth would just bless all of us. I pray that you would just help me as well to continue to learn what you have to say.
Yes.
Thank you for this, and I pray that you would give safety to everyone who travels back home today and this evening. Thank you, in Yeshua's name, amen.
Yes, you too.
Amen.